Financial markets seem to have found their footing in the last 36 hours on the hopes that maybe the Europeans have their act together and they grasp the severity of the situation in Greece. We're joined now by Gerald Celente. He's the publisher of the Trends Journal, who's been calling for a collapse for some time. And Gerald, there are some people who are saying that we already had the crash this summer. Did we already have it, or is it still coming?
It's still coming. Who ever had a summer like this one before? Yeah, I've been around a while. You never see some. And it wasn't that there were a couple of guys in the office, manipulating the markets. This was heavy volume. Who's ever seen fluctuations like this? And this is in the summer. Look at the price of gold jumping up, what, $200 in a month? No, the world is very, very weary and concerned. There's no way out of this mess.
And is there a way out of the mess?
Well, if you take the United States, for example, yeah, there is. And but nobody really seems to want to talk about it, except, I guess, Ron Paul. Cut military spending. What are we looking at, $1.5 trillion a year? And really looking at how about taxing the billionaires? That makes sense to me. And the stuff they talk about, and we're going to have more free trade. Oh, great. Just what got us into this. Look at the standard of living. It's not free trade. You're opening up your manufacturing plant in a slave labor country, making the product, bringing it back, and jacking it up.
So many things that we could do, but that we're not going to do. So are we headed for much more crash?
Yes, we believe it's going to happen. They usually do happen when people come back after the holiday and start looking at reality. Look at retail sales just came out. The real estate market, every one of them. There haven't been any recoveries. So probably October, if not.
October is crash.
October, yeah. It always seems to be that.
Yeah, but
it seems like always. Really, you're looking at your third quarter's over. You're looking at the end of the year, and reality set in. There's no way out.
All right, so we certainly wouldn't expect you to say there was going to be a happy ending, but how bad is it going to be?
They're looking at a double-dip recession. It's not a double-dip recession. It's called depression. If you're living over in Europe and you're a young person, under 28 years old, you're among about 50% of the people that don't have jobs. And just look what's going on back here in the States. When you're looking at the effective unemployment rate, you're looking at almost 17%. People that want jobs, full-time jobs, that can't get them, and people can't get jobs at all. We're looking at a depression. Go back to the 1930s, and we're playing that scenario over again. It's a recession, and then another recession. There's no way out of it. And, this whole thing, by the way, is we have to save the banks. We have to. When did this start to happen?
Right, about 3 years ago. But so you mentioned gold before. It's trading around 1830s. We're talking now. How high do you think it goes, and how low does the Dow go in this crash that you see?
When Gordon Brown in the UK sold half of the United Kingdom's gold in 2001 at $275 an ounce, we said that was the beginning of the gold bull run. And I've been saying since gold 2000, effectively what it hit, 1922.
Right.
It's not in the interests of any of the central banks to keep the price of gold high. So they're going to keep doing everything they can to drive down the price. Having said that, I believe it's going to go much higher. But I'm putting a peg on that, a ceiling on that, and only because I think they're going to take some draconian measures to drive down the price of gold. For instance, you know whose fault it is that all these markets are doing so terrible? It's those gold speculators. We have to rein them in. And go back
raise margin requirements.
As they've already done so many times. But look what they did in 1930s, FDR.
Right.
Bank holiday, we're taking your gold. You got to sell it back to us at $20.62 an ounce. And then when we get it all, we're going to raise the price to $35 an ounce, which means we just devalued your paper currency by 40%. I think they're going to take those kind of measures.
Right. So what does that? That means the dollar obviously is going further weak from here. What does that mean for the stock market? I mean, you talk about a crash in the Dow. Is it going back to 2009 to the lows there? Or?
I'm not really a stock market kind of follower, but I think what the market is what you get. I don't see it getting much better than this. It could get much worse than this. What's to drive it higher? You need retail spending at 70% of the society's consumer base, right. Consumer consumption. And you need unemployment to rise. And the mistake that people keep making, as I believe about gold, is it's not a bubble. I don't think so. primarily because when I began trading gold in 1978 at 187.50 cents an ounce, my first buy, remember the Hunt brothers cornered the silver market?
Right.
You can't corner the market anymore. Back then, hey, there was no Russia. Everything was behind the Iron Curtain. China, whoever believed it, and India, they were out of the game. It's a global game, and every country you go into, it's the same issue. Whether it's Israel, whether it's India, whether it's the so-called Arab Spring, whether it's Spain, the UK, a lot of people don't have anything, and very few have everything. Look at the poverty numbers that just came out. Who would have ever believed that the United States ranks down near the bottom in the gap between the rich and the poor? I think Chile, Mexico, and Israel is just, we're right down the bottom at a 38. So this thing is collapsing worldwide. It's a global collapse. Far too few have much too much, and way too many have much too little. And when the money stops flowing down to the man on the street, the blood starts flowing in the streets. This is not a pro-democracy movement in the Middle East. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has to do with a lot of people having no money and really being angry.
All right, Gerald, we'll get it there. Thanks very much. More bad news for President Obama. A new Bloomberg poll shows 72% of Americans see the U.S. economy is on the wrong course. 62% disapprove of the president's handling of the economy, and his job approval rating is now at the lowest level of his presidency at 45%. Meanwhile, the Republicans have won a special election here in New York to replace Anthony Weiner, winning that district for the first time in almost 100 years. We're joined now by Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal. And the weird thing is, Gerald, you say that if the election was held today, President Obama would be reelected.
If the three candidates, the front runners, were Perry, Romney, and Bachmann, he would beat them because they have nothing. And when you look at them and you watch the debates, if you break these down, you have Romney. He could be a golf pro. He has that look and that sales pitch. Perry, every time you start nailing him, he starts breaking down. He has more of that Elmer Gantry kind of flavor. And Michelle Bachmann keeps coming up on empty. And then when you look at the Republicans, and I'm a political atheist, by the way, I don't believe in any of this stuff, the party stuff. And when you look at what the Republicans keep doing and listen to the whole summer and where we are, what do they want to do? They talk about Social Security and cutting entitlements. You're entitled to nothing.
Right.
And as you know, the numbers in poverty levels, in income going down, a median household income. You think that people want to take more out of their pockets? And that's what the Republicans are advocating. So even though Obama won't do anything, and people have, ADD, they forgot that, didn't he reinstitute the Bush tax cuts back in December? He'll play the game, and people will believe it, because it's going to be just as they did in the last election. When you would tell a person all of the things Obama is doing that they don't like on the liberal end, they would say, what do you want me to do, vote for McCain?
Right.
And that's going to be this kind of election, too. It will be another lesser of two evil elections.
So, wait a minute. You're also saying the world is going to hell in a handbasket. We're going to basically have another revolution. Society's breaking down. It's so terrible and so forth. Given that, and given the unemployment rate, the poverty and everything else you're talking about, and Obama's seeming inability to do anything about it, aren't the American people going to do what they have done in the past, which is say, you know what, we are voting you out. Not we're voting for Romney or Perry, but we're just voting for change.
To me, if anybody watched the CNN debate that they sponsored in Florida, it was like watching a combination of announcing people for the Miss America pageant and the World Wrestling Federation. They say that show business, politics is show business for ugly people. This is the presidential reality show. You see, you're talking in terms of facts. I'm talking in terms of presentation. And in the reality show, Obama could pull it off better. That's all that was a campaign speech. He will promise the people something while the other ones are promising to take away from them. So and issues aren't really, they're going to keep it, again, to those major issues of Social Security, health care, entitlements.
Well, what about taxes? The Republicans are going to say, we're going to lower your taxes or promise you they won't be raised. Obama is going to raise taxes on a lot of Americans. Isn't that going to have some sway in the election?
I could do an Obama for you. I'm going to raise them taxes on those people with those corporate jets. So he's going to make it out. He's going to go after the rich.
But you're
people.
for that. Right. You say that's a good idea.
Oh, I'm not the call. I say yes. Soak the billionaires. Absolutely. I'm in favor of a flat tax. That to me makes the most amount of sense. Do away with the IRS. Just everybody pay a certain percentage. But no. So when he does do the tax game, he's going to come out like he's a progressive and wants to get the big guys. When he's talking about family of two, $250,000, I believe that 80% of the taxes, $250,000 to $500,000 bracket, will be hit the hardest. And living in New York City,
that doesn't make you
not
rich.
A lot of money.
That doesn't make you rich.
You're okay, but if you have 2 kids in college, you're just making it.
Right.
So that's what he's going to do. He's not going to really bang the Buffetts of the...
Right, so you said he would beat Bachmann, Romney, or Perry. Is there anybody, right now, is there anybody on the Republican campaign who's either declared or is still in the sidelines who you think could beat him?
We would say our 2 dark horse picks are Huntsman and Ron Paul. But Ron Paul just doesn't seem to have the charisma to get it out across. And Huntsman... he has the credentials, and when he jumped into the race, he was a former ambassador to China, there was a lot of backtalk in Washington about how he betrayed the Obama administration because they sent him to China not to get into this race. So I think a guy like him would have more of a shot than any of the other
Does he have a chance to get the GOP nomination?
It's too early to tell right now. Could you imagine, when I grew up, when I was a kid, this stuff didn't start until the summer before Election Day. Now we're, a year and a half before it. So much could happen between now and that part.
Does it matter who's president?
Yeah, sure it does.
It does.
Yeah.
So it's an important election.
It's a very, but look what happened in the midterm elections. Go back, as they used to say, play over the videotape. This is going to be a historic election. What historic? It's the same thing. It's important, but not when you have the Republicans and the Democrats. How about putting in the Gambinos and the Bananos? Nothing is going to change under the system that we have. And that goes back to the question, if Ron Paul got elected or if Huntsman got elected, it's still the same system. So, of course, it's really important, but only if we get somebody in there that really wants to do something to change the course.
Do you want to announce your nomination right now that you're running for president?
If I'm elected, I promise you nothing, and if I get elected, that's exactly what you'll get.
All right,
How about that for campaign promise?
You got my vote. Thanks very much. The government on Tuesday reporting more grim news on the state of the U.S. consumer. The poverty rate in America is now at 15%. It's its highest level since 1993. Meanwhile, average median income for Americans fell 2.3% last year to its lowest level since 1996. Our guest today, Gerald Celente, is a publisher of the Trends Journal. And Gerald, I don't have to tell you that things are tough out there for Americans. You've been saying this for a very long time. Do you see any signs that we're getting closer to the bottom, that things are going to get better, or they're going to get worse from here?
How are they going to get better? We heard the Federal Reserve say they're out of cards. They're looking to Congress to do it.
Right. So we have Obama's jobs plan.
Yeah.
He says it's going to help the economy, help create jobs in America.
Yeah, and he said this is half of what the other one was, and the other one didn't do it. So, you're ending up with zero, and that's even if it gets passed. No, things are going to get much worse. You're going to see a much greater rise in crime. You look at the data, by the way, and you see a rise in luxury sales,
Right.
And as the Walmarts of the world, they're losing ground all the time. What is it going to be? Let them eat Gucci? I mean, that's really what's happening over here. It's the same thing over in the UK. You just saw the riots late in the summer. They blame it on hooligans. You're seeing it in Greece, the people taking to the streets. You're going to see much more crime. And they come up with these, white shoe boy language terms. Flash mobs. What flash mobs? It's a gang getting together to rip you off, And you're going to see more of that. Look at the education levels. Just keep putting it all together. Major cities, you're lucky half the kids graduate high school.
So there was only one other time in history that we've had inequality as high as we do in the United States right now, and that was right at the end of the 1920s We had an incredibly horrific decade that we went through. Then we had a horrific war. Then we got into a period of good times, the 50s and 60s. So how do we get through it this time? Is it a repeat of the Great Depression? Is it mass violence? Is it a revolution? What happens to this society?
You know, when you go back to the 1930s, and they don't teach you this in school, there were riots all over this country. I mean, the union protesters, and it was violent. And the war really brought us out of this. This is the 21st century. It's a whole different model. We're really going into new territory at every level. What will happen? You know, will they take us to war? Yes. How about that little gem they just started up in Libya? Wasn't that a beauty? Just like that. Nothing. We're at it. They'll keep opening up all these fronts. In the meantime, they keep using fear and hysteria. I mean, you guys are New Yorkers. You go down the subway, there's a guy all dressed up with this stuff. There's a terrorist. Blah, 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 blah. Come on, who are you kidding with this? You're stopping cars everywhere. I'm a New Yorker. This never happened before. So, yeah, they're going to take us to war. I believe, and I think other countries are going to do it, too.
So we already have what most people describe as a completely dysfunctional government in the United States. Lots of people basically advocating the political system, everything else. Does that break down? I mean, does our society break down at its core?
It is breaking down. It's breaking down at every level, socially, economically, and politically, and it's not just the United States. It's worldwide. You know, we believe there's a solution, by the way. We're saying direct democracy. Let the people vote. If we could bank online, we could vote online. We don't have a representative form of government. This is not a democracy. The only people these cats represent are the people that give them a lot of dough. I mean, let's make this really straight. You call up Senator Schumer, see how far you get if your name is Joe Schmo. Send him a nice fat check. He'll be talking to you.
But we do have elections,
and
you're saying that they're
we're getting
rigged.
a two-headed one-party system. It's the same deal. So we're saying on issues of war, issues of education, issues of health care, major issues like they do in Switzerland, let the people vote. At least we'll get the future we deserve, and if we could bank online, we could vote online. This is, again, the 21st century. Because we got a bunch of losers in Washington. How could any adult believe these guys after a summer spectacle of that debt ceiling baloney? I mean, and then you see Obama's speech. I say, you know, you watch these people getting up and down, clapping like trained seals. Who's going to put your mind and your support behind these people?
Right, but do you have confidence or faith that the American people would vote for the quote unquote right solutions or the right people? Because Henry and I have talked about this a lot. You know, Hitler was elected in a democratically election. So was Mussolini. I mean, maybe we're going to vote for someone who's going to take us further down the path of militarism and, you know, extremism.
Look at militarism. We voted for Bush. How about 2 nice wars that we have? And then you see a guy like Cheney on there saying things like, you know, well, you know, we have to say that the world is better off without Saddam Hussein. Wait a minute. You said he had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. And, boy, my life is so much better without Saddam Hussein. We just saw Obama take us to war again. No, let the people vote. We don't have people.
The people voted for both those.
No, but I'm saying vote on issues.
On issues. Okay.
No, on major referendum on major issues. The issues that are the important issues, let us vote. War, education, health care.
So what about if it's a tough issue, like the fact that we have a massive budget deficit, we've got lots of expenditures that we have to cut, and we have to raise taxes? Nobody is going to vote for either of those things except conceptually. You put an actual budget in front of them and say cut spending, they won't do it. They'll never do it. They certainly will never raise their own taxes. Don't you need actually a strong leader to come in and say,
well,
you know what, I hate to say it, but this is what we got to do?
Yes, you need a strong leader, but you also need the facts putting out there. So let's say it's the budget issue. And let's say, do you want to cut the military expenditures by 30%? Yes or no? Or by 50%? Do you want to bring the troops home? Yes or no?